The lonely farmer Elias Kane lived on the edge of the galaxy, far from the busy trade routes and shining cities of humans. His home was a small farm on a dry moon, where the wind carried dust instead of rain. The soil was hard, the days were long, and the nights were silent except for the soft hum of the power generator. He worked alone from sunrise to sunset, planting seeds, fixing old machines, and repairing fences that no one else would see. Years ago, Elias had come here to escape the noise of crowded worlds. People thought he was strange, a man who spoke little and kept to himself. He did not mind their opinions, but sometimes when he sat alone at his small wooden table, he felt the weight of the silence pressing on him. There were no friends to share stories with, no family to ask how his day had been. Only the stars above seemed to keep him company. He often looked at them and wondered what kind of lives were being lived out there, far beyond his quiet moon. Once a month, Elias would take his old land speeder to the nearest trading post. It was a rough place filled with smugglers, traders, and strange alien faces. He went only for supplies, food, tools, and spare parts, but he always kept his head low and avoided trouble. Still deep inside, he wished for something more, something to break the endless routine, but wishes felt like a luxury for someone like him. One evening, as he was locking up the barn, a strange sound filled the air. It was low at first, like distant thunder, then grew louder until the ground seemed to tremble. Elias stepped outside and saw lights in the sky, bright, moving lights that didn't belong to any local ships. The craft passed overhead, heading toward the trading post, its engines leaving a trail of glowing dust in the night. For a moment, Elias stood frozen, his heart beating faster. Something about that ship felt different, as if it carried a shadow of change with it. He didn't know it yet, but his life was about to shift in ways he could never imagine. And it would all begin with a game he never planned to play. Asterisk, the galactic poker match. The trading post was alive with noise and movement. Merchants shouted prices, alien creatures barked in cages, and the smell of hot oil mixed with the scent of strange spices. Elias parked his old land speeder and stepped onto the dusty street, keeping his hat low over his eyes. He was here for food, fuel cells, and a few mechanical parts, nothing more, but the strange ship he had seen last night was still on his mind. It was docked at the far end of the outpost, its dark metal hull marked with symbols he did not recognize. As he made his way toward the supply shop, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted from the tavern. It was the kind of place he usually avoided, full of sharp-eyed gamblers and quick-tempered smugglers. But today, something pulled him toward it. Through the open door, he saw a group of aliens gathered around a single glowing table at the far corner. The table was covered in shimmering cards and stacks of heavy chips. The players spoke in low voices, their faces unreadable. It was a galactic poker match, a game where fortunes were made and lives could be lost. Elias didn't plan to join. He leaned against the doorframe, watching, his curiosity stronger than his caution. The dealer was a tall alien with skin like polished stone and eyes like molten gold. One of the players, a scaled alien with long, clawed fingers, spotted him and gave a slow, toothy grin. "You play, human?" The alien called out, his voice deep and challenging. Elias shook his head. But before he could turn away, another voice spoke. "Let him sit," said the dealer, sliding a chair out from the table. The crowd around the game shifted, making room. For him, Elias hesitated, then walked forward, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. He sat, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. A stack of chips was placed in front of him. "This round's open," the dealer said, his voice smooth. Elias touched the cards as they slid toward him, the smooth surface cold under his fingers. He told himself he would play a few hands, nothing serious, but as the first game began, he felt the air grow heavy. The players didn't just watch the cards, they watched each other. measuring every twitch, every breath. It wasn't just about winning money here. Something about this table felt dangerous, and Elias was already part of it. Asterisk the unbelievable wager. The games went on. Hand after hand, Elias played carefully, winning. Small pots, losing some too, but never letting his face change. The other players were skilled, their movements slow and deliberate, their eyes sharp like hunters around them. The crowd whispered and placed side bets, their voices blending with the soft hum of the lanterns above. After nearly an hour, the atmosphere shifted. One of the aliens, a broad, muscular creature with gray skin and jagged teeth, leaned back in his chair. He laughed, a deep, ugly sound, and then reached under the table. When he came back up, he placed something on the center of the glowing table. It wasn't credits, it wasn't gold. It was a living being. A young alien woman stood there, her wrists bound by thin metallic cuffs. Her skin was a soft emerald green that seemed to catch the light. Her hair was deep red, falling like a river over her shoulders. Her golden eyes glowed faintly, but they held no joy, only quiet defiance. Gasps went through the room, even in a place like this. Such wagers were rare and dangerous. She's worth more than you can imagine, the gray-skinned alien growled. She's strong, beautiful, and trained to obey. He spoke as if she were nothing more than an object. A piece of property. Elias felt a slow burn in his chest. A mix of anger and something else he couldn't quite name. The dealer hesitated, looking at the woman, then at the alien. This is no small bet, the dealer warned, but the alien only smirked, pushing a pile of chips forward. The crowd's whispers grew louder. Some called for Elias to fold, others urged him to play. Elias glanced at the woman again. Her eyes met his for the briefest moment, and in that instant, he saw something, not fear, but a spark of hope. It was faint, almost hidden, but it was there. Elias pushed his own chips forward. Matching the bet, the dealer's golden eyes narrowed. "Very well," he said, dealing the next hand with deliberate slowness. The alien girl stood perfectly still, her gaze fixed on the table. Every player, every spectator leaned closer. This was no longer just a game. It was a battle, and the prize was a life. The final hand, the dealer's hands moved slowly, each card sliding across the table with a soft whisper. The crowd had gone silent. The only sounds were the shuffling cards and the low hum of the lantern above. Elias took his 2 cards without looking at them right away, his eyes locked on the gray-skinned alien across from him. The alien grinned, sharp teeth catching the light. "This will be quick, human," he said, his voice dripping with confidence. Elias finally glanced at his cards. They were good, but not unbeatable. He kept his face calm, sliding 1 chip forward to start. The alien matched it instantly, his clawed fingers tapping the table in a slow rhythm. The first 3 community cards were dealt, glowing slightly as they touched the table. Elias felt a rush of possibility. His hand had grown stronger. The alien smirk never faded. His eyes cold and certain. The bets rose, chips clinking as they stacked higher and higher. Every time Elias pushed more forward, the alien matched him without hesitation. Around them, the crowd began to lean in, holding their breath. The dealer revealed the 4th card. The tension in the air grew heavier. Elias' fingers tightened. On his remaining chips, this could be it. The alien girl stood motionless, but her eyes flickered from the alien to Elias, as if silently urging him on. The final card was dealt. Elias took a slow breath, studying the table. His hand was strong now, very strong, but still risky. If the alien had certain cards, Elias could lose everything. The gray-skinned alien pushed all his chips forward in one heavy motion, the pile towering over the table. The crowd gasped. The weight of the bet was massive. Elias looked at his cards one last time, then at the girl. He pushed his entire stack into the center. All in. he said simply. The dealer's golden eyes moved between them. Show your hands, he ordered. The alien slammed his cards onto the table with a growl. It was a strong hand, nearly unbeatable, but Elias laid his cards down slowly. The dealer paused for a long moment, then nodded. Winner, Elias Kane, he said. The crowd erupted in shouts. Some cheering, others cursing. The alien snarled, his claws scraping the table, but he said nothing. The dealer unlocked the cuffs from the girl's wrists. She stepped forward, free for the first time in who knew how long. Elias rose from his chair and without a word turned toward the door. Behind him, footsteps followed, light and certain. The alien girl's reaction, the crowd slowly began to scatter, but whispers still filled the tavern like smoke. Some were angry that Elias had won. Others were amazed that a quiet farmer had beaten one of the deadliest players in the sector. The alien girl stood just a few steps away from him, rubbing her wrists where the cold metal cuffs had been. Her golden eyes followed Elias as he moved toward the door. She expected him to turn, to claim her as his prize, like so many before had done to others in her position. Instead, Elias stopped, his back still to her. You're free now, he said quietly, his voice carrying through the silence. The words didn't seem real to her at first. Free, a word she had not felt in years. She looked at him carefully, trying to understand his angle, his hidden motive. Most men who won a wager like this would have taken her without hesitation. Yet here was this stranger, walking away, leaving her with nothing but her freedom. Around them, a few onlookers exchanged puzzled glances. One grizzled trader muttered, "He's either the dumbest man I've seen, or the best." The girl's chains lay on the floor, shining faintly under the lantern light. She could have run then, disappearing into the crowd, but instead, she took a slow step forward, then another. Her bare feet light against the wooden floor. Elias kept walking, not looking back. By the time he reached the tavern door, her steps matched his. Outside, the air was cooler, carrying the faint scent of desert dust and starship fuel. The night sky stretched above them, filled with countless stars. Elias walked toward his landspeeder without a word. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "My name is Lyra," she said. Elias glanced at her, gave a small nod, and replied simply, "Elias." There was no pity in his eyes, no judgment, only a quiet acceptance. It was something she had not seen in a very long time. They climbed into the landspeeder, the engine humming to life. The trading post faded behind them, replaced by the vast, empty stretches of the moons. Wilderness. For the first time in years, Lyra felt the faint stirrings of something she thought she had lost forever. Hope, and though she didn't know what the future held, she knew this. She was not walking it alone anymore. Asterisk the journey back, the landspeeder cut through the night, its engines humming softly against the backdrop of an endless desert. Stars glittered above, so many that they seemed to spill across the sky like spilled grain. Elias kept his eyes on the road ahead, guiding the speeder over the uneven terrain. Beside him, Lyra sat quietly, her golden eyes scanning the horizon. It had been years since she had traveled without guards, chains, or orders. The open air felt strange, almost unreal. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Elias wasn't a man of many words, and Lyra was still unsure if she could trust him. The desert wind tugged gently at her hair, carrying with it the faint scent of dry earth and blooming night flowers. She turned to look at him, his face calm but unreadable in the dim glow of the control lights. "You didn't have to free me," she said at last, her voice low. Elias didn't take his eyes off the path. "Didn't seem right to keep you," he replied simply. They passed through narrow canyons where the walls rose high on both sides, casting deep shadows that hid in the moonlight. Sometimes, Lyra thought, she saw movement in the darkness, creatures watching them from hidden ledges, but Elias drove on without concern. The journey was long, and the stars shifted slowly overhead. When they stopped to rest, Elias handed her a canteen of water and a small bundle of food. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had in weeks. Lyra ate in silence, her eyes never leaving him. There was something about this man, a steadiness, a quiet strength that didn't need to prove itself. When they set off again, she felt her guard lower. Just slightly, she told him about her homeworld, a place of green forests and silver seas. Taken by slavers before she was grown, Elias listened. Without interrupting, his hands steady on the controls, by the time the faint outline of the farm came into view. The first light of dawn was touching the horizon. The small, weathered building stood against the pale sky, surrounded by fields of dry soil waiting for rain. It was no palace, no shining city, but it was free land, and it was his, for the first time in years. Lyra felt she had arrived somewhere she could breathe. She didn't know if she would stay, but she knew she wanted to find out. Changing two lives forever. The first few days on the farm were quiet. Elias showed Lyra where the water came from, how to feed the small herd of grain beasts, and how to check the solar panels when the lights flickered. She learned quickly, her hands steady even with unfamiliar tools. There was a calmness here she had never known. No shouting guards, no locked doors. Only the sound of wind in the fields and the low hum of the power generator. At first, Lyra kept to herself, sleeping in the small guest room Elias had given her. But slowly, she began to speak more, asking questions about the soil, the crops, the strange stars above them. In return, she shared stories of her people. Tales of old heroes who sailed silver seas under twin moons. Elias listened without judgment, sometimes smiling, sometimes frowning when the stories turned dark. They worked side by side in the fields, planting seeds in neat rows. Elias taught her how to fix a broken harvester, and she laughed when the machine sputtered to life with a puff of blue smoke. In the evenings, they sat on the porch, drinking bitter desert tea and watching the sky shift from orange to deep violet. It was in those quiet moments that Lyra began to feel something new. Not just safety, but belonging. Word of what had happened at the trading post spread slowly through the sector. Smugglers told the story in hushed tones, some saying Elias was a fool for giving up a prize like that, others calling him a hero. But Elias didn't care what they said. To him, it wasn't a story about winning. It was about doing what felt right. As the days turned to weeks, the emptiness that had once filled Elias's life began to fade. He had someone to talk to, someone who understood the quiet, someone who didn't see his solitude as weakness. And Lyra, for the first time in years, could wake each morning without fear, knowing her choices were her own. One evening, as the first stars appeared, Lyra looked out over the fields and said softly, "Thank you." Elias didn't ask for what. He just nodded, his gaze on the horizon, somewhere out there. The galaxy was still dangerous and cruel, but here, on this small farm under the wide sky, two lives had been changed forever.